Al-Ghazali's The Incoherence of the Philosophers, written in 1095, challenges the very foundations of philosophical thought. Almost a century later, Ibn Rushd responds with The Incoherence of the Incoherence, defending philosophy with equal fervor. These seminal works have been explored in detail on our channel, Attic Books. Imagine unlocking the gates of time and witnessing an extraordinary encounter between two of the greatest minds in Islamic philosophy. Today, we embark on an imaginative journey where Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd, though they never met in reality, engage in a profound dialogue. We will bring them together in three distinct locations: Spain, Baghdad, and Istanbul. Our first stop is in the heart of Al-Andalus, within the courtyards of Cordoba's grand palaces. Picture the 12th century ambiance, where the golden rays of the setting sun bathe the intricate architecture in a warm glow. In this serene setting, Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd stand face to face, their robes gently swaying in the evening breeze, ready to discuss the nature of causality. Can fire burn cotton on its own? Or is it an act of divine will? Al-Ghazali begins, his voice carrying the weight of centuries-old wisdom. Next, we travel to the bustling markets of Baghdad, the city of 1,000 tales. The air is filled with the scent of spices and the hum of traders. Amidst this vibrant backdrop, our philosophers meet again, delving into the intricate subject of God's knowledge. Are universal principles real, or are they just products of our minds? Al-Ghazali asks, his eyes reflecting the depth of his philosophical inquiry. Finally, we find ourselves in the majestic city of Istanbul, where east meets west. The grand domes and minarets create a breathtaking skyline as the Bosphorus flows serenely below. Here, Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd engage in their final debate. Does the universe have an eternal existence? Inviting a timeless discussion that bridges the gap between their eras. In this video, we'll simulate their debates, focusing on the themes of causality, the reality of universal principles, and eternity of the world. So, join us as we remove the dust and explore the clash of these intellectual titans. Causality.
The philosophers claim that everything in nature follows a fixed order of causality. They say fire burns cotton because of its nature, but I challenge this. Imagine a magician who can make objects disappear. The disappearance isn't because of the object's nature, but because of the magician's will. Similarly, fire burns cotton not because of an inherent nature, but because Allah wills it to burn.
Ghazali, your analogy is entertaining but misleading. Fire burning cotton is not a magical event, but a natural process. Consider a clock. The gears and springs work together in a precise order to tell time. This is causality in action. If we deny causality, we might as well claim that the clock tells time because of magic, not because of its mechanism. The consistency and predictability of natural laws are essential for understanding the world.
But what if the clockmaker decides to change the mechanism? Just as the clock's function depends on the clockmaker's design, the natural world operates under the will of Allah. Think of a potter shaping clay. The clay doesn't shape itself. It's the potter who decides its form. In the same way, it is Allah who decides how and when events occur, including the burning of cotton by fire.
Your potter analogy emphasizes human intervention, which is not always applicable to natural processes. Imagine a garden. The plants grow because of sunlight, water, and soil, a natural causal relationship. The gardener may plant the seeds, but the growth process follows natural laws. If we attribute every detail to divine intervention, we negate the purpose of studying and understanding these natural laws. Causality provides the framework within which the divine operates.
Consider a puppet show. The puppets move because of the puppeteer's control, not by their own will. Similarly, the natural world is like a stage where Allah is the puppeteer. The consistency you see is due to Allah's continuous will. If He chooses, He can change any natural process, just as a puppeteer can change the movements of the puppets at any time.
But even in a puppet show, there are strings and mechanisms that allow the puppeteer to control the puppets. These mechanisms represent natural laws. Denying these laws is like denying the strings exist. Without recognizing causality, we cannot appreciate the complexity and order of the universe. It's not about limiting Allah's power, but understanding the system He created. Imagine an architect who designs a building with specific structural principles. Recognizing these principles doesn't diminish the architect's creativity. It enhances our appreciation of the design.
The philosophers assert that universal principles exist in the mind, abstracted from the particulars we observe. However, this concept is flawed. Think of it this way. The idea of treeness does not exist separately from individual trees. Each tree is unique. Some are tall, some are short, some have broad leaves, others have needles. The concept of treeness is simply something we use to talk about these individual trees, not something that exists independently.
Ghazali. Let's use a more relatable example. Consider the concept of redness. When you see a red apple, a red car, or a red flower, you recognize the color red in all these objects. This redness is a universal that helps us identify and categorize different objects. It doesn't mean redness exists as a separate entity, but it exists in each red object and is recognized by our intellect. Without this universal, we would struggle to identify and understand the commonalities between different red objects.
But redness only exists because we see it in these objects. If there were no red objects, the concept of redness would be meaningless. It's a label we use for convenience. Imagine if you tried to explain redness to someone who had never seen anything red. They wouldn't be able to understand it. This shows that universals like redness don't have real independent existence. They are dependent on our experiences with particulars.
Consider the game of chess. The rules of chess are universals. They apply to every game of chess ever played, even though each game is unique. The rules don't change whether you're playing in a park or in a tournament. These rules exist in the mind of the players and are not tied to any single game. Universals, like the rules of chess, help us understand and navigate the world by providing a consistent framework, even though they are abstracted from particular instances.
Even in chess, those rules are useful only because they are applied to particular games. If no one played chess, the rules would be just theoretical constructs with no practical value. Similarly, the concept of justice exists because we see just and unjust actions. If there were no actions, justice would be an empty idea. We risk losing sight of the real, lived experiences that give these concepts meaning by focusing too much on abstract universals.
Think of a recipe for a cake. The recipe is a universal. It provides the general principles for making a cake. Yet each cake made from the recipe is unique. The recipe, universal, allows us to create various cakes, particulars. Without the recipe, the process of making a cake would be chaotic and inconsistent. Universals do not negate the particulars. They provide the structure and coherence that make understanding and creating possible.
Eternity of the world.
The philosophers claim that the world is eternal and has no beginning. They argue that if the world were to begin, there must have been a time when it did not exist. But if time itself is eternal, then the world must also be eternal. However, this reasoning is flawed. Imagine a potter creating a pot. The pot did not exist before the potter made it. Just as the potter decides when to start making the pot, God decides when to create the world. The world had a beginning because God chose to create it at a specific time.
Ghazali, your analogy of the potter is limited. The philosophers argue from the nature of time and existence. Consider the concept of numbers. Numbers have always existed. They were not created and cannot be destroyed. Similarly, time and the universe are eternal. They argue that time has no beginning or end, and therefore the universe, existing within time, must also be eternal. The potter analogy falls short because it does not account for the eternal nature of time.
But numbers are abstract concepts, not physical entities. The universe is a physical reality, and its existence is contingent upon God's will. Imagine a painter deciding when to start painting on a canvas. The canvas, time, may exist, but the painting, the universe, begins when the painter starts. Just as the painting had a beginning, so did the universe. The universe is not like numbers. It is a creation that began when God willed it.
The philosophers assert that if the universe had a beginning, there must have been a reason for God to create it at one particular moment rather than another. This implies a change in God's will, which contradicts the idea of his eternal and unchanging nature. Think of the sun and its light. The sun is eternal, and so its light is also eternal. The universe, like the light from the sun, exists eternally as a natural consequence of God's eternal nature.
This analogy suggests that God's will is constrained by necessity, which undermines his omnipotence. God is not bound by any necessity and can create whenever he wills. Consider a king who chooses to bestow a gift. The king's decision is free and not bound by any external necessity. Similarly, God's act of creation is a free act of will, not dictated by any eternal necessity. The world began when God chose to create it, just as the gift is given when the king chooses to bestow it.
Ghazali, the philosophers argue that an eternal God necessitates an eternal creation, not out of constraint, but out of the nature of eternal existence. Imagine a fountain that has been eternally flowing. The water, the universe, flows from the fountain, God, eternally. The act of creation is not a one-time event, but an eternal process. The universe has always existed as an emanation from God's eternal nature, just as the water continuously flows from the eternal fountain.
As we conclude this thought-provoking exploration into the minds of Al-Ghazali and Ibn Rushd, we've journeyed through the golden palaces of Cordoba, the vibrant markets of Baghdad, and the majestic skyline of Istanbul. We've delved into deep discussions on causality, the reality of universal principles, and the eternity of the world. Our philosophers have presented their arguments with compelling analogies and profound insights. Let's continue this intellectual exploration together, where philosophy knows no bounds and time is but a canvas for ideas. Thank you for watching Attic Books. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and stay curious.